Hey everybody. Hey y'all, welcome to the Octavia Butler mixtape course where we talk about the works of Octavia Butler and all the cool things that she has written. Y'all, we are wrapping up Parable of the Sower today. And so if you love Octavia Butler's work, you're going to want to come in. Hey everybody, let me know if y'all can hear me. Please tap the screen. Let's get these likes up. We are moving quickly through Butler's universe. Like, we're wrapping up the Parable of the Sower. Next week we tackle Parable of the Talents, and you all are literally about to be Butler scholars. Like, I'm so proud of you all because so many people cannot say that they've read Butler's entire canon. Because she does have an expansive canon. It is one that many people cannot say they've read. They may have read one book or two books, but no one has, not too many people, I ain't gonna say nobody, not too many people have read the entire Butler canon. So if y'all still rocking with me, if y'all been here since Kindred and you know the Patternist series days, congratulations. Y'all are true scholars, true Butler scholars. But as I said, we are wrapping up Parable of the Sower tonight. This is probably one of Butler's most well-known series. Hold on. This is probably one of Butler's most well-known series. This is the one that people loved to return to when we were in the COVID days, but also when the California fires were, you know, in full swing earlier this year. And so we're finishing this. I'm going to open up reading some of Butler's words from an interview about it as we wait for more people to come on. Because I just like reading Butler's words about it. So this is an interview, actually. Of course, all of the interviews come from conversations with Octavia Butler. You can screenshot it if you want. But this is an interview between Butler, Juan Williams, and who else? Someone else. I think her name was Rachel. And she gave this interview, or this interview was hosted in 2000 on NPR. And so I didn't even know about Butler's work in 2000. I was in the fourth grade in 2000. So I knew nothing about Butler's work in 2000. I didn't come into an awareness of her work until 2013, first year master's program. Thanks, Mallory, for the rose gift. 2013, and I always tell people that I was attracted to her work because I was at this place where I was looking for Black women writers who didn't just theorize about power, but actually demonstrated power. And I was like, when I read Butler's Kindred, I was like, yeah, this is my girl. And I've not deviated from her work since. But this interview, oh, what's that? That's cute. This interview, let me put my phone on do not disturb because people know I be teaching at this time. Anyway, so if y'all want to chat, come on up, click the two people at the bottom so you can join the panel. And I'm going to read this while we wait for more people to come on. So this is Butler's interview. And Rachel asks a question. She says, can you talk about your political agenda that you may or may not have about, and then she pauses and it says that you've used with these two books. And the two books that she's referring to are Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents. She says, I mean, there's clearly a vision that some say we are quickly moving towards. And Butler says, no. She says, no. Then Rachel says, even if we embrace compassionate conservatism, some say that we're moving in that direction. And I was wondering if you felt comfortable addressing that. So of course, Butler is she's asking Butler about some of her political beliefs as she's shaping and writing the Parable series. And this is, okay, and let me put this on mute. Okay, and this is Butler's response. She says, my political agenda doesn't quite sound right. It sounds as though I'm trying to, as I've said, put forward prophecy with these novels. These novels are not prophetic. These novels are cautionary tales. These novels are, if we are not careful, you know, if we carry on what we've been doing, this is what we might end up with. The problems that I write about are problems that we can do something about. That's why I write about them. We don't have to have the educational problem that we have now. And we certainly shouldn't give up on public education. Although I've heard surprising numbers of people talk about it as though that's what we should do. They don't have to, they don't have an alternative. They just think, well, public education doesn't work, so why bother paying for it? And then the other interviewer comes in and says, well, I think that is increasingly the attitude of this country. But I wanted to challenge you. Butler says, that's terrifying. He says, well, that's terrifying as in science fiction, isn't it, in a way? She says, well, it's terrifying in real life. And he says, right. And Butler's like, I mean, you have to think about what kind of world you want to live in. And I don't think there is a person alive who will want to live in a world that I've written about, but we can arrange it. And then he says, well, in fact, I was going to challenge you on that notion. You said you don't really write about power relationships, but I think you do. I think, and Butler says, oh. So Butler is saying here, they weren't prophetic, but more specifically, I think the thing that's very important here that she's saying that we can do something about these worlds that we are creating for ourselves. We don't have to live in the world that we find ourselves in right now. And if we continue to think that conservative values will save us, they won't. And that is, you know, one of the underlying thoughts that is in this novel. And then we will see full displayed of when we get to the parable of the talents, when the things actually begin to happen. So if you all may have noticed, the people who are just now reading this for the first time, that this is filled with a lot of movement. We're inching towards something, right? We haven't gotten there, but we're seeing things happen around us. When we get to Parable of the Talents next week, everything will begin to happen, which is why I have us reading it over 3 weeks as opposed to 2 weeks, because it is dense, it is emotional, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody. That is the hardest book for me to read. So I just wanted to start this off with Butler's notes. Of course, we can agree or disagree. It doesn't even matter, but I just wanted you all to hear what she thought about her work. Okay, y'all. Hey, panelists. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to May. How y'all feel? How y'all doing? How y'all feel? We got a lot to discuss. Anybody can jump on in that want to.
So, the parable series is always challenging for me because I try to be optimistic about it, but just like I said, this time period and what's going on, it's always a lot. And I have to say, one of the tropes that I hate, and I forgot this part of this book. One of the tropes that I hate so much in a lot of fiction is the older man and the teenage girl. I swear to God. And I read speculative fiction a lot. So it's always the 5,000-year-old vampire with the 16-year-old woman or 16-year-old girl or whatever else. So when I read that part, and I was like, I don't know. It just bothered me, and it was hard for me to it was hard for me because I hate that trope so freaking much.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when I read it before, I wasn't as attuned or whatever else, and I was like, why would you be 57? Like,
yes,
damn, nasty. Like what?
It's nasty work. But you know what's funny? People, when we get to fledgling, there is another age gap.
Yes.
An age gap appearance, but not necessarily age gap.
Right.
And so readers generally give Butler a hard time about Wright and Shorey's relationship, but they forget she's 53. She just looks like a kid.
Yes.
But yeah, Butler does love a good age gap. We've seen it with Eli and Carrie in Clay's art.
Yeah.
Right? Doro and Mary, that was incestuous. Yeah.
Yeah, I just was like, why would you? I don't know. It's just because I know she's writing this stuff, and I'm like why? I just and that's a trope that I know in book talk or whatever else. We just like rail against. Stop doing that because it's just so fetishizing women and all the rest of it. So part of me intellectually wants to think, well, she wanted to make some sort of statement about it, and give power because even though she's only 19, she is the leader of this group. You can tell she's the leader of the group. And so I thought maybe that's what she was trying to say or whatever else. But I just really wish that was not. I wish the dude was like 25.
Yeah, that would have been
30.
better.
I can even live with 30, but my God, 57?
57.
It's
And,
like,
but then again, I wonder what economic, like, what does the economy have to do with it? What, like, how does survival impact the ways in which we look at companionship? Do those things still matter? Do those norms, those social norms that we are find acceptable, do they still stand up in times of crisis?
I mean, like he did have a cart, which, nobody else did. He clearly had a whole lot of money and
Yeah,
he had land.
yeah,
So I can understand why that, but she didn't know all that before she was feeling him almost immediately.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I was just like, oh God. I mean,
yeah,
he was a good guy. I know some stuff happens later on in talents, but I don't know. I don't know. Different eyes, like I told you guys. Reading this 5 years ago and now reading it now is just different eyes.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that's fair. Anybody else?
So this was my first time reading this book, and I felt like I'm definitely age gap relationships, hate them, don't like them in real life at all. So like, but reading it, surprisingly, how I felt like reading it in this book, considering the times, considering like I felt like it's pretty much the end of the world. And she also, from what I remember, like talked about being wanting to be desired.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like that played a part in it as well. So it was like, even though I know how I feel about it in real life in current times right now, right? I also felt like this is also the end of the world. It ain't like she got her pick of the litter. So
Uh-oh, you got paused down, Michaela.
I'm sorry. I felt like I was a little bit more forgiving because it was, like I said, it's the end of the world. People painting their face and throwing fires, and I just,
She sized,
yeah.
and I mean, to be fair, and I see people in the chat saying she's wearing the pants in relation. She did size Bankole up. She sized him up. She was, Butler gave us the expose about how he looked, and she presented to him like he had this salt and pepper beard. Someone says he got a cart, like, like there was some. She was. I don't even know how to even categorize that relationship or even explain it or talk about it because it does make you uncomfortable. But then as we are in the middle of a crisis here, right? The world is on fire. Do you care at that point? I don't know.
Well, the other thing that I will say is that I recognize, like you said, the end of that was a good point. Like, it's the end of the world, and you got to think about it a little differently. But one of the things that you've taught us, Dr. Bree, is that a lot of Octavia's um, personal issue stuff, insecurities or whatever else come off in
Mm-hmm.
this thing. And so one of the things I thought about was the way that she described Lauren sounded like her.
Mm-hmm.
Tall, somebody who could, dress a certain way and maybe be mistaken for a man and some other stuff. And I thought, well, maybe this is how, she thought like this is the only way a man would be attracted to her. Like, I thought maybe some of her insecurities came out in that relationship. So yeah, it just seemed like that could have been one of the things, but I don't care. End of the world or not, I'm just like, I wish he could have just made him just a tad bit younger.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have, I mean, he was older than her father.
Yeah.
That got me. When she said it, he's older than my father. I just,
Y'all, can I say something?
Yes. First of all, I'm glad you put that in the chat because I was like, what am I going to say? But go ahead.
It's hey y'all, I am the comment warrior. I be in the comments. I be on the comment on Substack. My name is Kiasha Dallas. I'm that person to make that connection. Anyways, I hopped on here just so I could say I don't believe that the relationship between Lauren and Bankole, whatever his name is, I don't believe that it was love. I believe that it was a means of survival. I believe that Lauren was being affected by daddy issues because we also never really figured out what happened with her dad. Like, he just went to work and then he disappeared and they was never able to find him. And then on top of that, he was her only biological parent. So she was super, super close to him. And then so like her dad disappeared, the people in her little community are getting attacked. So it's just like her whole world just went from like 0 to 100 in less than like what, I don't know, a week or so. So, and then on top of that, she's traveling with these people and they're hooking up and she can feel that. So I feel like her and Ben Coley's relationship was partly she's an opportunist. Like, he has land, he has a cart, he has knowledge about guns and all of these things. So she was like, okay, well, you could definitely be a part of my little group gang team family, whatever we want to call ourselves. But then on top of that, I feel like it was partly daddy issues because we don't know what happened to her dad. And I think that she was just lonely because she also had to like she was leading these people and then all of the other people started coupling up and having sex, so that just kind of leaves Lauren to like she was just by herself. Like, everybody else in the group had something to occupy them or someone to occupy them, whether it was a significant other or a child. So I feel like part of the reason why Lauren got with him was because she was lonely.
Okay. Do y'all think his status or former status as a doctor had anything to do with it? Could this be seen as a hypergamous relationship?
I was just about to say, well, he had a cart. That's how I'm going to phrase every relationship. What I say, I'm going to turn them. They're not going to get the reference. I'm like, well, he had a cart. And they're like, girl, what? And I'm going to have to explain it, and it's going to make sense. Because what I think the cart represents is what she just said, which is like, even now with women who, the ones who date the older, come on, sprinkle, sprinkle. Her version of a sprinkle, sprinkle is a man with a cart. He had that.
Yeah.
So I find that it doesn't have to be love, because I mean, we could actually ask the question now: how many of these girls love these men that are old? Because Miss Lady said you ain't supposed to love him; you just need to be provided for. So, and I think she is an opportunist, and because she has a goal in her mind of like she's got to get these people. I won't say free. She's not Harriet Tubman, but she has a purpose, and he's the best avenue through that. Then it made sense for her to couple with him. And I mean, she's also young, and he seemed hot. I mean, when I read it, he seemed like not George Clooney, but he seemed hot. He's an old silver fox, and he had a cart. So I think that he served a purpose, and if it grows to love, that's okay, because originally this is how marriages were, was that you would essentially, like, you weren't with someone because you loved them. You were with someone because they served a purpose. And so, truthfully, if this is to go back to the contract state of marriage, then they have two partners into an agreement and they're both getting their needs met. And so, for all intense purposes, it makes sense that Bankole is hers and she is his.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Is there room for love immediately in relationships when you all are in crisis? Like, we're in a world in crisis, right, in this narrative. So I don't think you don't have time for that. I think that there's strength in numbers. You're trying to find companionship. You're trying to find people who have resources that you don't have. So I think that the way we think about relationships when you're in crisis is different than how you would think about it if you were not. And also, we do see like some nodding to the fact that these relationships do happen in this story. Now, they are master-slave relationships, but there are age gap relationships happening in this story too.
But I know you just mentioned, think about how we think about relationships in crisis. We was experiencing relationships in crisis during the pandemic. And let's think about how all people coupled up, because like you just need some companionship. You just need somebody to be there
Somebody
with
next
you.
room.
Like we gotta remember that too, y'all. Like she needed just somebody to lean on. And
Maisha
she did,
sure was.
you know what I'm saying? Like that's what he was. It was like, and she also, I felt like she also respected him because he was a doctor, because he did have these things. Yes, it may be a little opportunist, but y'all, it's the end of the world. We almost thought the pandemic was the end of the world.
Exactly. I was gonna say that too, because in chapter 17, when Lauren is like, "Did you and Harry," speaking to Zara, like, "did you wear protection?" She's like, "No," and then she just sort of like shrugs. She's like, if it happens, it happens, and that's such a good point about pandemic babies and like the rise on that, because it's so realistic. Even men and women, they just, no matter how chaotic things are around them, like it's like they just sort of block it out and just whatever. If it happens, it happens. Meh. There's no long-term perspective. There's no consequences of their actions at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that also when we're thinking about consequences, like I feel like the consequences of the economic collapse are more severe than consequences in relationships at this point, right? And I'm not making excuses for this relationship. I think it is a very weird relationship. I've always thought that, but the way Butler writes about it, she makes it seem okay, right? It is not an abrasive thing. It's something she eases us into. And we'll see more of in Parable of the Talents. But I think it's also because Bankole, or Bankole as the audiobook says, he's agreeable. He doesn't appear to be dominant. He doesn't appear to try to overshadow her. He's very kind of beta in a lot of moments. And so I think if Butler has taken us from Lauren being a child to a woman, from her being a daughter to a leader, she has to ease us into that type of relationship. Like I don't even want to say his name because y'all gonna go off about it, but she can't give us a more abrasive man. That's what I'm gonna say. I ain't gonna say his name. All right, anybody else?
I think at this point, for me, I was just thankful that Bankole wasn't white and he wasn't abusive. Like, I was like, okay, age gap, that's weird, but it's a lot better than everything else that we've read so far. So I'll take it.
Yeah, he comes across as protector, as kind man. He comes across as caring, the things that kind of make you look the other way on some other things, right? He has a lot of great qualities. And Lauren Butler was clear to let us know that he had an expensive haircut or had just gotten one not too long ago. So she's setting us up for this love affair with Bankole. And I think that he is a respectable man. But again, as you all said, she is 18, 19. Yeah. All right. Anybody else want to share any thoughts, feelings?
I swear to God. So the one part about that, when that came on, only thing I'm sorry, you guys, but I just thought about Shannon Sharp, and I was just like, see, and so I had to not think about that because that's what came up. I'm like, because
See, I feel the same.
Gap, that was it.
I feel the same way about it when it comes to real life Shannon Sharp. That in this book, I don't know, for whatever reason, it made sense for the situation in the time that she was in. So for whatever reason,
Also, Shannon Sharp don't have a cart.
Well, he got a symbolic cart. He got a
symbolic.
No, like think about okay, actually no, he don't have a cart.
Okay.
Because Shannon Sharp, what he does with younger women is not what Bankole is doing with this woman. Shannon Sharp is just a meat stick. A stupid meat stick, but a meat stick nonetheless. Bankole serves a purpose. He's actually useful. He's not abusive, which we have seen that Shannon Sharp tends to skew on the side of abuse. So I think that the age gap, but also he 70 years old. I'm kidding. He's old as heck.
He's old.
Talking to this young woman and not serving a purpose. Again, the point of the cart and not a buggy, because a buggy's a little less fancy.
Yes.
The cart gets you where you need to go. Shannon Sharp ain't getting nobody where they need to go. You can't even get a scooter off that man because he ain't got no cart.
Okay.
I understand. I agree.
You got to be respectable. So respectable people have the cart. Right? Is this what y'all saying? Like respectable, he's okay.
Yes.
I was just trying to catch it. I'm interested, did you all catch those telepathic references? that wasn't happenstance. Like the fact that she kept referring, saying, "Hey, you're not telepathic," or "We're not telepathic," like she's actually nodding back to the Parable series. And Kaisha, right? I think you kind of wrote about that on a Substack. You want to?
Yeah, and I apologize because I know I'm really long-winded on the Substack, but what I was trying to articulate is that it's very, very hard to think that this series is disconnected from the Patternist series because Lauren has this hyper empathy. So the way that I thought about it is that Lauren might have remnants of telepathic traits. It's just that we are so far removed from the telepaths that we and the people in the story don't think of Lauren as, oh, she's special, she's gifted, because there's not a lot of people out there like her, and she don't have her power is not strong. It's just remnants of whatever was left in the genetic pool. So it's interesting that they're just classifying it as a mental illness, because like even like homeless people on the street and stuff like that, like they be talking, and a lot of people will just write them off like, oh, they're just crazy. But it's like, are they really just crazy, or can they see something that we can't see? And that was kind of the case with Lauren too. Like everybody was saying like she's crazy,
Delusion.
this is a yeah, it's a delusion, and like she's basically crippled in this world because she can't fight. But at the same time, Lauren had the foresight to know that shit was gonna hit the fan before it hit the fan.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I understand that Lauren's not a telepath, but I can't just take hyper empathy as a mental illness. And then what I was also trying to say in the Substack was, I feel like Butler like completely rejected that, like saying like, no, Lauren is not a telepath, to drive home the point of the story. Like, the parable is not the patternist. We might have remnants of it, but it's not the patternist. There is no telepathic, there's no magic thing that's going to save us in this series. This is real. This is rooted in reality. There might be like some other elements that she echoed at from her past series, but this is rooted in reality. But at the same time, I feel like Lauren's just has leftover genes. And the same thing with the dogs too. Like, why was it so many dogs in the world, and why were the dogs like such a threat to the people? Even as I was reading it, I was like, well, did the dogs like devolve from being Clayarchs to dogs? Because why are the no, seriously, because why are the dogs such a threat,
Yeah.
and why are there so many of them? So that's what I was trying to say.
I like your analysis, right? I don't have a clear answer. The only clear answer I do have are the ones that I've put forth, that these texts are interconnected, and she desired to create one big world happening in different timelines, focusing on different characters, and each book has remnants of the other books. They do, and so I really appreciated your perspective about Lauren and what Butler classified as her mental health issue or a delusion, and said, no, these are probably remnants of her living in this world, this being passed down genetically, and we don't know how to classify it because now we're in this post telepathic world. No one is really considering that, right? So I appreciated that for sure.
So so one of my questions then is, in the book, they meet other people who and they now have a name for it, sharing, right? So they meet other people who have the same kind of thing, and they talked about, yes, you could get pregnant, and then if you get pregnant, you could pass this down to your children, or you might not pass it down, and like just all these different circumstances of that this is that, and that also those people who are sharing are prized, enslaved, like they're prized, they fetch a bigger price, um, because they can do this sharing. So it's, to me, like I go back to when we talked about it last week. It's hard for me to accept that as a mental health issue and not it be genetic, because it's to me it just seems like it's genetic.
Yeah. Um, I want to kind of going through this idea of world building and interconnected of her series. I want to read something from her archive on world building. It's a little bit long, but this gives you some more insight into how she was writing and what she was thinking about. Um, and it says, this is from, I don't know what year this is from. I can probably check the notes, but it says, as a writer of historical fiction, I recreate worlds of the past according to research, interpretation, and imagination. A writer of modern fiction interprets the world of today, but a science fiction writer does both these things plus one more. A science fiction writer builds worlds, creates worlds in which, much like our liberal way, then does a writer of other fiction, and it's fun. It does take quite a bit more than 7 days, though. Writing may only be the profession in which the bad habits your mother and your teachers try to break you out of turn out to be at least as useful as the habits they praised. One of my good habits that definitely contributes to my world making now was bothering librarians a lot. I'm not what anyone would call a well-read reader, because there's no order to my reading. I'll read a little of anything. Sometimes one of my worlds will be created in a certain way because of what I'm reading when I begin to write. I've had to throw out pages I've loved because I suddenly realized I'd been poaching in some fellow writer's science fiction world, and that's scary. All I need to start writing are pages. All I need to start doing is ripping out pages that are nagging me and feeling like somewhere is something that I've read before. That's why no amount of reading can compensate for feeling, seeing, and experiencing. And so this kind of goes back to the point that I was making, that Butler was feeling her way around the world, right? She's writing herself into these societies. She's experiencing things that, may not show up to the forefront of her works, but they're happening in history. And of course, people weren't seeing her as intellectuals. I think McSam said that last week that, we should not just say she was prophetic, because it takes away from her intellectual merit or her academic merit as a Black woman writer and researcher. And I fully agree with that. But people kind of discounted her because she was not well read, because she was dyslexic, and also because she was a writer and rewriter of things. And she wrote weird, I use that in air quotes, weird things for the time in which she was writing. And I'll read one more quote and then we can get back to it. The reason why I'm doing this is because we're ending this book, right? And so I want to give y'all as much information that I can, and it'll live on YouTube. Okay. So here's the next quote, and then we'll get back to you all. She says, none of my worlds are created smoothly. I generally give up on them over and over again, like a smoker trying to quit. I'm told I have discipline, but in me, discipline means developing an addiction to my work. When I'm working, half the time I'm miserable because my fictional world isn't fitting together as it should. When I'm not in the middle of anything, I'm even more miserable because I'm confined to only one tedious real world. There is a real payoff, though, one that doesn't have much to do with an acceptance or a check from a publisher. Not that I mean to minimize acceptances and checks. They're great. But the first payoff comes when a world is born out of the chaos of my reading and living. World making, its synthesis, inspiration, serendipity. And there is nothing like the lovely feeling when I realize it's all going to work out. She's building, as she is writing Parable of the Sower, she started writing this in the 70s, I believe. Then she goes through this long period of writer's block, and then she's able to write something that she feels is worth it. with in the 90s. But as she's reading this and she's thinking about all of these things, we see that she is writing all of these books at the same time if you ever go to the archive, right? And I think that no matter what, even if her worlds do not feel as put together as we would like, or as they may come across a little messy or challenging and things of that nature, I think that when Butler is writing out a world, she's doing so feeling her way through it, not having had the access to the academic work. She's like literally boots on the ground. She literally goes to the Amazon. She's actually traveling to these places to be in order to write about them. She's spending time. She didn't have a lot of money. She was on a Greyhound majority of the time that she's writing these books and traveling to these places. And that's a lot of work, right? That is a lot of work and a lot of feeling. And of course, she says here, like she was generally depressed. She was a depressed person. I would not lie about that. Her archive is very heavy with emotion. So much so that I had to leave several days early because you're wading through the thoughts of a writer who you may, kind of glorify on the outside, but then you get behind, the curtain and you're like, wow, you were really struggling and you were able to write your way through this thing, but it's still so heavy and it's still so heartbreaking in a lot of ways. And so I just wanted to read that because we are quickly ending this parable series. And these are some of the notes that were from Parable of the Sower more specifically. All right. What else y'all got? We want to talk.
I just really appreciate the ending of Sower because I really thought that Bank was gonna pull a fast one and to be like, gotcha, but it was actually not like that at all. I'm really, really grateful for that. Another thing too is the only time I really do like Sower, but the only time I was like really rolling my eyes was when she was picking up people from the highway and she was really trying to like convince these people, and I was just like, oh my god, she's such an extrovert. Like she's got so much patience and charm, and she just loves people. And I just couldn't. I wouldn't. She really wants to recruit these people, but they're giving her so much heck. Like they're giving her so much resistance, and she's still with it. She's still so patient, and I couldn't. I just really couldn't. She's such a nice person.
Well, don't feel bad because Butler was not like that in person, in real life either, right? She's experimenting with being this character and what it would be like. She was a hermit. She was silent. You really, she's really a fly on the wall if you ever read some of her writings and some of her interviews. So don't feel bad. Taichi says, hey, Taichi, my number one, hey. But she says, did Butler say what happened to Lauren's daddy? Nope. She does not necessarily say what happens to Mr. Olamina. He just went missing one day, didn't come home. That's it. I don't have any notes about that either. But he did have to leave because I think, is it in the notes where she talks about a tree, something not being able to grow in the tree or the shadow of something? Like these old systems have to go. They have to go. And her father and his wife and all of the older people, if you notice, none of the older people really survived from her community. They would not be able to survive because they weren't willing to change. They weren't willing to go on the streets. They weren't willing to do the things that the new world required because they were holding on to the good old days.
The older people in this story reminded me of Blake from Clay's arc, and I forgot his name, but the daddy from Survivor. That's what the older people in this story reminded me of, because they were just so stuck on what they knew and they couldn't open their eyes and wake up like, look, the world that you knew is no more. So you either need to get with it, it being this new world, or you're going to get lost. Like, that's just how I saw it.
It reminds me of when we were in the COVID days, right? In the thick of it, everyone was like, we want to get back to normal. We want to get back to the normal you knew will not come back.
Ever. Even 5 years later, it's not the same. And I find myself telling this to people in my life. Like someone said to me recently, like, oh, I just want to get back to doing what I was doing before the pandemic. And I was like, wake up. The world don't even look the same as it did before the pandemic. So you need to adapt to what's in your face right now,
Mhm.
or you gonna get left.
And it is that nostalgia, right? Like, Benji's mom drops in the chat that Banco said, I don't think you can understand what we've lost. Perhaps that's a blessing. Lauren is like, I don't know why y'all reminiscing on these cars, all this stuff. Like, I don't get it. He's like, the 90s were good, the good years. And it reminds me of how a lot of people like the 90s R&B was unmatched. 90s R&B was unmatched for a lot of people. And so I think that it is just the nostalgia of what was. And because we're in the uncertainty of the present moment, that people are going to wish and reach for what they knew because you've already survived it. You've already lived it. You know what's expected in that world. No one knows what's expected in the 2025 Trump year part two. Right? Trump years, part 2. No one knows what to expect. No one knows really what to do. And so I think that could be a part of why people are like, oh, yeah, that was a good time. Okay. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think people also, just tend to, like you said, romanticize what they know. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all had a relationship that was not what we wanted it to be. But, when the breakup first happened, all you think about is the good times.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? I felt like it was a lot of that in the book because even I found it interesting when they had like made reference to the police and how like when the police, they used to help you. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And Lauren's like, I don't know them police. Like, why do y'all trust them?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But she doesn't have a point of reference. Yeah. It's just like when when I was still in the academy and my students used to be like, back in the day, and I was like, when was back in the day? And they'll say the 90s, and like you just like kind of want to fight because you're like, what you mean back in the day? Or if they're writing an essay, they'll say like in the olden years, and I'm like, what you mean the olden years? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the reason why I was asking just about Mr. Olamina was because he got it. And I think that's why Lauren got it. Like, he understood what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't naive and stuck, but he was trying to, I guess, turn everyone's head the way he knew how they would accept that information. If I go about it as I'm just teaching you something, as opposed to, hey, they're coming over the wall soon, you need to protect yourself, it's going to be different. And that's how he was coaching her. And it just seems like he kind of disappeared out of nowhere. Now, with all of those survival skills and everything he had in his brain, I was just wondering, like, how he was just gone. Did he just quit? Did he see something we didn't and chose and said, like, my family's better off without me? Like, I'm just speculating about his story because I felt like he automatically got it.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that I think about when I think about his disappearance is kind of the lesson that Butler was trying to teach us in in Survivor about religion, and how sometimes that can be a limiting thing, right? Because we see the missionaries were not able to adapt to the new surviving world because of their staunch religious beliefs. And in a book that is partially infused with King James Version verses and old religion and Buddhism and all these things that kind of interconnect this spiritual community that Lauren is building, I don't know if there's room for someone heavily tied to. I don't think that Lauren could successfully emerge as this leader if she still had him around. Because I do know that, and I'm going to read this before we get off, but Butler starts to evoke Jim Jones in a way. So I don't know. Like, he didn't seem like a problem, but I do wonder if religion would be the problem, why he had to leave, I
also wonder if he would have adapted his views if he saw what his daughter was getting after and how good she was at surviving. I felt like we didn't really give him enough chance because I felt like in order for him to be the leader, he had to be staunch with his religious practices. Like, people were looking at him. Mm-hmm. Now that everybody's dead and dispersed and nobody knows you, what are you going to do then? Mm-hmm. I felt like he was smart enough to adapt because we often talk on this platform how a sign of intelligence is adaptability. I think maybe he would have been able to do it. And Lauren being somewhat of a scaredy cat to open up to, her father about it, and the father just disappearing. I think we didn't give those two a chance to kind of duke it out and see. But yeah.
I don't know. Like, I think that that's a good way to think about it. But I also think, like, when Butler writes that line about her father's God no longer being her God very early in the text, I think that kind of starts to kind of signal a divide, right? Like, maybe he could have adapted, but how long would it have taken someone who has been a pastor and taught as a pastor and held the community together based on Judeo-Christian beliefs? I don't know how long it would take him to evolve.
And there's also, misogyny.
That's true. And the I wiped your butt
led
syndrome
by his daughter. Yeah.
Yes, I wiped your butt syndrome. I ain't gonna be able to do it.
Yeah. I just wanted a real chance to have them duke it out. Like you said on the Substack, like, it seems like Butler was trying to make this new religion or like emerge with like a new belief, but it didn't really evolve. She didn't really flesh it out. And it was kind of like reverting back. She was in and out, back and forth, and it looked like that the whole time.
Yeah.
Because some ideas were new, but then some ideas just weren't new. It's present everywhere, and she was kind of just pulling from everywhere, which everything else comes from everywhere. So I'm just trying to figure out like what she was trying to say, but I get it. It's hard.
Yeah, it is very difficult to kind of untangle yourself from, the beliefs, right? And I think that even when we're thinking about the fact that this book is called Parable of the Sower, and it ends on the parable of the sower from the Bible, right? She's in the parable of the talents. That's another parable taught by Jesus, teaching kingdom principles in the Bible. She can't fully divorce herself from this belief. She could try to build on it, pull away from it, but it's so ingrained that I think at this point in this text, she's struggling to kind of put enough distance between that while still working through maybe some type of religious trauma or something to that effect. I don't know though. Like, it made me uncomfortable, and I said this in the Pace Magazine article. I think I'm gonna drop it on Substack, that it made me uncomfortable as a believer because one of the reasons why I did not like it at first was because she was confronting a lot of things that I believed that I wasn't willing to confront until I had to confront it. And then I'm like, okay, he was probably right on some of this stuff. But I didn't want to confront it like my first read, my second read, until when you're brushing up against someone's beliefs or something that someone has been taught and they have never interrogated what they were taught, it gets kind of uncomfortable. So yeah.
So one of the things that struck me also in this process is, and I can't remember which character said this, but said to the white guy, you could be a driver.
Oh yeah.
Because you can read and write, and they like it, and that's a good thing that you can read and write, but you could be a driver.
Yeah.
And then he says, well, you mean trucks, because like I don't know how to drive, but I could definitely learn how to do that. And you could, on the page, this is why I love Butler, you could feel him being excited about that. Mm-hmm. Like here's an opportunity for me to have my own and be my own man and all of this kind of stuff. And then when and it was casual, her tone was like, no, it's a driver of people. You're a slave driver. Mm-hmm. That's what that is. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, and this is, and through their walking, all of his kind of like high morale, we're not thieves, we're not this, we won't do this, all of that stuff, each step they take, all of that stuff falls away from him. I thought that was brilliantly done throughout the book, because you just see, that some of the things that he had that were fundamental to him inside those walls no longer applied. And the cruelty and the ease of slavery being reinstituted.
Oh, it's very, yes.
It's the ease of it. Like, we're going to have corporate slaves where you basically, and, like plantation where you got script money. This did not help our South centers at the same time with the whatever. So just you got these corporations that are basically making you work for room and board, and then they basically putting you into debtors thing, and that now your children have to work to pay off your debt. and it's like the ease of and the speed of slavery, and just her describing a driver like it was nothing, and then also through the text realizing that there was like a lot of forms of it over and over and over and over again, and that the government was condoling it and making laws to make it possible. That made me have to put the book down for a little bit to be able to finish it, because that was disturbing to me, just how like there is no resistance to it. Like, okay, you're gonna be a slave, all right, not a problem.
But you'd be surprised how quickly we adapt
Yeah.
right, to the new normal. Like, yeah, if you need to eat and there's nothing to really steal, you can't steal because you're gonna get unalive.
Yeah.
You're going to willingly go into some type of indentured servitude system willfully, because you want room and board, you want food, this is something that that, yeah, I'm going to be a slave, but I'm going to work, I'm going to be an indentured servant, I'm going to be a sharecropper. They're reinstituting enslavement, right? But it is as a result of an economic collapse. And I think the thing that scares me is that it looks very similar to what's beginning to happen now.
Yeah, Elon Musk with his own, I'm making my own towns.
Well, I feel like they've been trying to institute company towns after the pandemic, because every brick and mortar went under, right? And then everybody's just like, well, nobody wants to work. Everybody wants to work from home. That does not work for the machine. They were already instituting that even before Trump was in office. It doesn't matter what political party. Like, especially since, they're working on like new tech, company towns are definitely going to definitely give sharecropping. Like it literally, I'm not partial to any political party, just people who are less dense than others. But like, it was already going to happen because we needed to reinstitute and reignite the economy. So everybody was going to go back to work. The child labor laws were being laxed or rewritten to accept certain things way before. They were lobbying for it way before. I think it was even back in Trump's first term. So it was happening. What was very, very, very poignant to me is the fact that what Mr. Olamina actually said, and then everybody who was against it, this was talking from a place of privilege. They either had information or they were okay to last a little bit longer. So I do not fault or do not feel any type of way to people who automatically picked up the phone and get a job at this company town. I just want to preface that, like, I get it, survival. And survival makes us do things that we don't want to, and shut out all red flags, because again, you have to eat and you never know what you're going to do when you're faced with that decision, even though you're selling yourself. But again, back to my original point, what Mr. Olamina said was the name of the factory, that they were all foreign and everybody was cutting up chunks of American land so that Americans can sell. And I thought that was so poignant. If people missed it, you read too fast, you missed it. That's what's happened. Like, the fact that we owe today so much debt to everyone else, they're going to start chopping us up. How, ironically, they chopped up other countries colonial-wise. I think if we're not careful, you're going to start to see things just exactly as he's like in this book. And I thought that was really, really well done. I don't know if she used historical context to kind of like put that little nugget in, or whether she dreamt it, but that was awesome.
Yeah.
That the company towns are all foreign.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. But yeah, I completely agree with that. Also, that's in the copy of the Parable of Sower that I have. Butler says at the end in the reading guide portion that the United States, this world that she created, it's due to a lack of foresight and short-term unenlightenment. And I always disagreed with that, because to me, it always seemed like everything that is happening is absolutely intentional. And I like that you brought up the fact, like in some of the questions, that she touches on class and she touches on gender and power. And the reason why this is happening is because of the hierarchical system. And if we think about the Pyro Gang, why they're so angry, it's because the fall that they had to the bottom was so significant that I think it's really just resentment and angry, which is the reason why they just want to burn everything, like on a Joker type archetype sort of level. They don't see any way that this is going to get better. And so I just thought that it was really interesting that she said, oh, it's just a lack of leadership, whereas even the currency amount and the fact that people who are of color, they are not given as much. It's definitely because of racism. It's definitely because of classism. And I don't know, I just saw it as completely intentional and by design, and not just, the leaders don't know what they're doing.
I can see that. And I think that it is by design, right? And it's done very intentionally. It's done very slowly. The rollout is very slow, but the effect is very immediate. And I just think about the children in these societies, right? Who are ultimately throwaway children. People are having these kids and selling these kids for whatever they need. Like these children, we're in childhood slavery. We're in childhood prostitutionary times again, where this stuff is, it's society is too far gone to even care about the individuals who cannot care for themselves, right? So yeah, I think that when we're seeing each person or each class of person impacted, but then we're seeing the children the most impacted, right? And that is scary for me because they cannot advocate for themselves. They cannot protect themselves. They are literally being sold off by their parents or taken advantage of by their parents, right? And so go ahead.
What I found like scariest about this story was that it's a dystopian novel being told from the perspective of the middle class. Because technically Lauren and her community, they're in the middle. They're not the super rich, but they're also not the bike gang or vermin or the pyro people or whatever you want to call the people that are even lower than them.
Yeah.
So it was scary to me because I felt like Lauren's community could be us, or like people like in my demographic. And I was trying to think, like, what would I do in that situation? Like, would I really try to hold on to the little bit that I have, or would I just spiral and go crazy? Like I might just start doing drugs and become a pyro person, because at that point, what do I have to lose? The government won't help me. The police won't come get me. Everything's falling apart. I can't work for money. So like what would I really do? It almost felt like the middle class people were almost kind of like silly to even try to hold on to what they have.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I never thought about them as the middle class. And in a world where the middle class is actively shrinking, we I don't even know what to say.
I was going to say just that. Like, so our numbers are dwindling because of the rise of cost of everything. So more and more people are going to be considered the lower class. And in a survival sense, sheer numbers matter. So the fact when she kept saying like, they're coming over the wall, they're going to come, I was just like, yeah, absolutely. Like I thought that, like I said in my previous point, like, yeah, they're all talking from a place of privilege. So I do agree with Yash that they are the middle class and they barely had anything. but they could at least grow things. They could at least have the chickens. Like those on the outside of the wall, they didn't have anything. And
Yeah.
so when your numbers keep going and you see people keep being shipped off to these company towns to be serviced, like it was just like metaphorical and physically, like you could see their numbers dwindling. And that, yeah, there's
Yeah.
not gonna be a point. I get that.
Yeah, and then even at that point, like Mr. Olamina didn't want to go to the company town, but like what was the alternative? You know, stay in the community and risk being attacked, risk your life, go to the company town, or listen to Lauren and try to walk across hella state lines. Like they didn't really have, there was no choices.
Yeah, and especially with him, like I thought, again, we now know that you can work 100% remote and you do not need to go into any office or whatever else. So to me, even the fact that he had a job that he had salary with, and that they would make him, and they know how dangerous it is. Like it's not unknown because the college had set up where you could kind of like spend the night or do all these. They had all these precautions in place, but you still required him to go in. Why? Like that the whole that's holding on to something that no longer functions. It no longer functions.
I
So
I think from what Yash is saying, what you were saying, Tina, I think that something that's kind of dawning on me is like this book is a critique about the arrogance of the middle class. Right? We believe if you're middle class, you believe your walls will protect you, your gated communities, your walled in communities. You believe that because the middle class does hold up the economy in a lot of ways. But the middle class is shrinking quickly, right? And now we're seeing the economy being rocked as a result of that. But this is a critique of the middle class. We have believed certain things that will never touch us. We have believed that we are safe, but we don't always know how to survive outside of our walls. We don't know necessarily, and when I say middle class, I'm not talking about Lauren. She is just like inheritor of the middle class, but her father, right? Lauren, I think is kind of like Gen Z-ish. That's how I think about it. She is prepared. She knows how to eat off the land. She's done this research. She's done this type of stuff. But the middle class, once the middle class collapses, then society itself takes a big dive.
I also just want to point out the different like stages in life that people were in. I really feel like affects the decisions that you're gonna make, right? Like I feel like it was easier for Lauren to make the decision like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go. Cause right now I don't have family, I don't have anything. Everybody's gone. Nothing is holding me back.
Yeah.
And like for her dad, you have to remember, okay, he's looking out for the well-being of everybody. He's not just thinking of himself.
Yeah.
And I feel like that definitely makes the decision harder. Just like even in present times, a lot of people are, considering moving abroad.
Yeah.
It's even something that's crossed my mind. Like, is this something I need to consider? Well, what places would I want to go to if I was to make that decision?
Yeah.
That will also mean that I'm leaving my immediate family. I have brothers, I have nieces and nephews. I see them weekly. And if I move abroad, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that affects my everyday life. So I feel like it's not just a decision of, okay, yeah, I'm gonna just go, take a chance on this company town, or I'm just gonna go and take a chance on the unknown of I might get attacked by the pyros, or I might get, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's a lot to weigh.
Yeah. No, that's real. That's fair.
That like what I was trying to kind of getting at earlier when I was saying like what would you do in that situation? Like I might start doing drugs. I think that Butler was kind of getting at that too because of Keith. Keith was in Lauren's family, and as soon as his dad pissed him off, Keith became an outside person, just like that. Just like that. So I think that, like, she's also saying about the middle class, like, you guys are closer to the lower class than you are to the upper class. Like, and if y'all, I mean, not necessarily in this story, but I'm thinking about in life, like, if middle class people and lower quote unquote class people got together instead of fighting each other, we would have the numbers to beat the rich. But we don't do that. The middle class people think that they above the lower class people, just like racism. Like, if you could convince a poor white man that he better than the black man, he gonna shit on the black man. So it's like, I don't know. It's very interesting that she wrote this in the 90s, because, like, I see this happening now.
Yeah.
Like, I've had people in my life, like, you know, like, we joke and say, like, oh, we one paycheck away from being homeless. I've had people in my life lose their job and kind of go a little crazy, you know? Like, so yeah, I think that she's saying a lot to us.
I think it was in like chapter 11 or something where Lauren asks Keith if he's actually tried the drug, and he said, absolutely not, I'm not trying that drug. And I think another thing that she was trying to tell us with the story is to not, I think the whole up the company town is that it's not worth it. Like someone said, what choice did they have? They had the choice not to go, and I'm really glad they didn't take it, because if we learn anything from Emery and Gray and Travis and Gloria, they were all enslaved. And so I like this idea of migration that you bring up in your questions. That's there's a lot of things that are worse than death. And so if you want to like trek out and just take that chance, it's far better than being enslaved, because, you know, it sounds appealing, but in this society where everyone's illiterate and no one's reading anything and no one's listening to other people's opinions, I think it's really dangerous to just go along with whatever someone tells you, especially the company from, you know, in this place, it's like a Japanese Canadian, you know, conglomerate. That sounds really appealing, but they don't have the information, they don't have the history, they don't have the knowledge to know, like Lauren does. She reads copiously. You know, that's not a good idea. That's not informed. I'm agreeing with my father. And Corey's like, you know what? You're so negative. Like, you don't see the positive sides in anything. And she's like, actually, I'm actually a realist. Well, I don't know what she says specifically, but she's just like, you know, I don't even think she continued arguing with her.
Because I think when you're faced with how are you going to survive, the questions of how are we going to eat, how are we going to be protected, the logic doesn't matter. It's how can I get this immediate need met, and we'll deal with the rest later, right? But right now I'm thinking of the danger that we're in. So we may need to call the school, like they may need teachers. They may need this. They may need us, right? And I'm saying need loosely, but there is still that elitism that I can call them and get in. They'll need of me, right? I don't have to be like them. And I think someone in the chat asked, I wish I would have pinned the comment, but she asked, do we think that, I think it was Hilly who said this, do we think that Keith's, what is it? I'm trying to scroll to get it. But his privilege, do you think his privilege did something? Dang, Hilly, can you write it again?
It says, y'all think maybe Keith's privilege and favor from his mother, I think it says this mother, but I think maybe she meant this mother, gave him debilitating entitlement.
Yes. Like if you grow up behind a wall, you grow up with a certain privilege, you are better than, right? And therefore it gives you this false sense of, it gives you this Superman syndrome, I think, or it gives you this ability to think like, oh, I can care for myself because I've cared for myself in this wall. And then you get outside of the wall and you realize there is a real world out here that does not care about the spit in your mouth, right? So of course that he was going to die, whether we liked it or not. And someone said in the chat he was a sociopath. But it is that privilege that causes people to believe that they are above certain things. And just like we see with the pyro addicts, and we discussed at length last week about their ability to access the drugs, take the drugs, and still kind of exert some type of dominance over people and their privileges and their communities, and decide who gets to live, who doesn't get to live, is all rooted in privilege. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing that, like I said, when the laws changed, that basically said if you run up debt, your children have to then pay off your debt. Like so it's generation, that's chattel slavery. So there is no way for you to get out of it. And like, so this company town is, they're supposed to offer all of this stuff, but they were under no obligation to actually offer it or to do anything. And if you got any money, it was in the script money, which was no money at all, that you are going into you are like, if I give you money, it's going to be script money. I'm going to make you go to my store. Everything is going to be beyond what you can pay for. The sharecropping. And so I'm going to, like, at the end of the time period, look at what you did produce and say that you didn't do enough because everything costs so much. So it's the same. It's Jim Crow, in terms of chattel slavery, in terms of like generational, because now it's generational. And then it's Jim Crow because you can't get out.
Yeah.
Like that's why when we talk about the migration from the south to the north, a lot of times that was done at dark, and they crept out because the plantation owners who were still there living on plantations and all the rest of that. My grandmother used to talk about this. We were going to leave from. They was living in Arkansas, and they migrated up to like Missouri, and so she was like, we had to leave at night because we didn't want them coming after us. Like, so you couldn't even, the right to just leave and just go away, like you couldn't do it. You had to sneak out and do it.
And then you
worried that somebody's going to catch you.
could not stop at hotels. That's why they have the green books. Like, you were literally on the road.
Right. So you had to sneak out because in those towns, they needed you to do the harvest. They needed those skills. They needed that stuff. That's how they were becoming rich. And they put you in a space, even though you were supposed to be free, you were still under this restrictive stuff. So that's why I said the part about the driver and just how easy the elements of enslavement were there, and it was easy. People are signing up for it, like you guys alluded to. They're signing up. What else can you allude to it? And I think that people were signing up for something they thought was going to be security, but it wasn't security. It's not security. I'm signing up for slavery.
I recently reread John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath as well. And it's so funny because at that time, especially in the Jim Crow era, sharecropping era, if you're looking and reading books separately and not in tandem, you think it's just happening to a certain group of people. But the whites moving from south to north pushed out of their own land, quote unquote their own land, because we already know, but pushed out of the land that they were toiling because factories moved them out and they had to move west. It was the same thing. Everybody was hired to pick grapes. California is so great. Everything's happening in California. Come out. And they got basically the entire South coming over to California to pick. So then they can choose their prices. They don't have to pay you what they promised on the paper, which it was a privilege to be white because at least they promised you something, right? On a sheet of paper, on a bill that says you can come, you can work as much as you want and you'll get this. But because I have so many people and you guys are all hungry, I don't have to pay you anything. You're going to work and you're going to come and you're going to, only shop at my stores. And again, like Tina was saying, everything is too expensive for you to pay for. So now you're incurring debt. And I'm just thinking, like, was there a safe place that they could have migrated to at any point in time that would have been better than what they were in, or better than the company town? because again, as someone mentioned, like the company was like Canadian Japanese, but they were trying to escape to Canada. Like where, and then there's a privilege there that they're even going to let you in, or they, you won't be quote unquote deported, back. What would they be safe if they migrated up north? Is there? There's always a chance that you take. Um, when you're moving. I don't know. I feel like Yash, I don't know that there was a concrete solution, but at least I think her intelligence just said I had to try because anything's better than here. But I don't know that things would have been much different.
No, I agree with you. I don't think that there was all the choices. Every choice is bad, and I guess it's like what degree of choice is the least bad. Knowingly signing up for a town where it's the structure of it is slavery. I mean, I don't know if anybody on this call other than me has ever picked cotton or been in the fields or done any of that kind of work, and then uh, to think that you did all of that and that you got a wooden nickel
Mm.
and that you didn't have the right to do certain things. They had right over her children. Like they had ownership of her children. I mean, just it's a lot to just like in which you came from this town where they do all the nice brochures and all the good marketing stuff, where that you were thinking, okay, so at least we'll be safe. We'll have a house, someplace to live, even if it's a little small cot. We know how to make do. We can make gardens. Well, depending on where you are, they wouldn't give you seeds to do that. They wouldn't allow you the opportunity to make gardens. They wouldn't allow you. I mean, just a lot of stuff. So I think that just because I've experienced some of this stuff from my family who have been sharecroppers and other kind of things, how close it is, how close, and we're not that far off from it. I mean, we're talking about this imaginary town, this imaginary world, supposedly projecting, but it's very close from where we were 50 in my lifetime. I'm 62. So in my lifetime, I've seen all like the green book was kicking and all of this stuff was there. There is not that far off. So that's why this book has like such a, and I know the talent is gonna kick my ass, but that's just,
Yeah, prepare.
yeah, I know. I'm glad you broke it up in 3 parts.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a hard read. This is a hard series, but Talents is a hard read by itself. As we're thinking about that, we also have to think about like what happens when you do want to leave these societies or these privatized towns that did give you this. Well, you're gonna, if you haven't worked off your work, or worked off your labor or the whatever, for what you're working for in exchange for, this is a reinstatement of the convict releasing program in a lot of ways. You're going to be seen as a convict, and we're going to see that in Parable of the Talents, that these work for hire, work for room and board, work for the hair of your chinny chin chin, societies are coming back. These systems are coming back because they're deeply ingrained in the American consciousness. And it only takes one thing to unravel the mummy of this system, right? The mummy that is this system. And it is a very, as Butler says, we didn't have to get here, but we're getting here. Right. And then we have to think of the motives of people and why are they doing this? And I'm always thinking about when the California fires were happening early this year, and people were saying that buyers are coming in and offering to buy the scorched land from the people who are just lost everything. Like it's still under fire and you trying to get us to sell it. Why? Because you have probably this idea that Butler is starting to flesh out in Parable of the Sower in mind. You want that land. It's valuable land, right? You don't care if the people just lost their homes, their belongings, their livelihoods. You want the land because it's prime real estate and you want to build on it, right? You want to build this type of town because if, our supply chains are about to start hemorrhaging, we have all these issues happening due to tariffs and all of this stuff. We're quickly getting to this moment where there is going to be a dependency, an uncomfortable dependency on private companies and the state. And that is the hard part. We have 9 minutes left. Anybody want to say something?
I just wanted to say, I feel like we already there. Like I already feel like I'm uncomfortably dependent on my job
Mm-hmm.
already.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like I mean I guess it could get worse. Like but the fact that like healthcare is tied to your place of employment is that's already uncomfortable. So what is it for them to say like, okay, now your rent is tied to your job and your groceries and your utilities and everything else. And that's what was so that was another reason why it was reading this book was so scary, because I was like I feel like we're already here.
Yeah.
Like and then like with the like with Lauren's community and the homeless people like coming over the wall, let's say like a group of homeless people or a group of drug addicts or something do decide to attack us in our homes right now. What are we gonna do? Nothing. Or I don't know, die trying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like we're already there and I don't know what to do.
I don't know either, but we are there. And as someone said in the chat, our housing is tied to your job. You know, they want to see your check stubs. They want to see you can pay 3 times the rent. They want to see a lot. And then the deposit, like there is a lot that goes with, like you have to be tethered to a system. You have to be tethered to it, or else no one would trust you unless you are. God forbid you lose your job, then you know that's another thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of what was like intense for me is reading this and it was saying 2025 and I'm like, but it's 2025, 2026. But wait, 2026 is gonna be here in a minute. And then just like we were saying earlier, I think it's like I think people also expect change to be like these real big changes happening, right? And being like, oh, okay, now it's time we got to do something. But it's the slow, little bitty changes here and there that people just let, go under the rug. Like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just this, it's just that. And then you turn around, you be like, oh, wait a minute. What just happened?
Yeah.
How did we get here?
Yeah.
But it was slow, little bitty, easy changes that they were making all along. And before you, like I said, in the blink of an eye, it was slow, but it was quick at the same time.
Yeah, and you get a small hole in a garment, it's only a matter of time before that thing becomes big. It's the small things that you don't notice. Right? It's the small changes that go under the radar. It's like, oh, I didn't notice that. It's not that big of a deal. And then you realize, oh, snap, I'm in the middle of a pothole. And I've been driving up the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, because if you don't spoon feed these things into society, people will panic. People will push back. You want to ease them into it, kind of like I don't even want to say boiling a crab because I saw that lady air fry that crab today this week. But you know what I'm saying? Like you slowly turn the temperature up, and then you're in trouble. Yeah,
right. So like the fact that for whatever reasons, U.S. citizens can be deported.
Yes, insane work.
I don't like deported to where? Like U.S. citizens can be deported. That they're going to try to pay women to be pregnant.
Yeah.
And then my favorite campaign when he was talking about black jobs and saying we're getting rid of the immigrants so we can retain your black jobs. And I kept thinking, what black jobs? What are you saying here? And that's
What's
back
the
to the
black
field,
job?
right? The black jobs is us in the field or living in your company towns.
Yeah.
That's the black jobs. That's what we don't want to have immigrants. So like if the immigrants are gone, and then that means and we take away the jobs, we take away all the crutches that we think that exist. So now you have to work in the fields again.
Well, we okay. We don't want poor immigrants. Let's be clear.
Right. Yeah, we just don't. The immigrants, but the immigrants who are actually doing the job right now, we don't
We
want
don't want
them.
them.
We
We
know
want
we
the
need to
millionaires.
have right. So we need to have somebody that's going to replace doing those jobs.
Yeah,
So obviously, black people used to do this before. You can do it again.
I
right.
think I
Like,
think what we're slowly talking about and what we're getting to and what the crux of all of this is hinged on is manufactured consent. If
Mm-hmm.
we are very much fine with looking and just talking about people that are not like us or foreign from us having their rights taken away, we're slowly going to be okay with having some of our rights taken away. And that's the spoon feeding that Dr. Bree was talking about. So, first, it started with repealing certain laws.
Mm-hmm.
Then it started with, okay, are you all right with certain people being in detention centers? Because, they're illegal immigrants. The word illegal is crazy. But these people are illegal and they're immigrants even though they're paying taxes. Are you okay with seeing them in concentration camps? And they flood our media with this so we get desensitized to what is actually happening. And it's just like, oh yeah, no, like it's known that, these people, they hold detention centers and they automatically get deported and, there's lies being spread about them that they're using our social security, whatever the case may be, but like they're actually paying taxes and they can't get social security because they don't have a number. Like all of these facts get denigrated and they were just like, no, it's a known fact. And it becomes fine or it becomes something that is normal. This is slowly so that like when we start getting put in cages and then it's just like, no, but remember, you were okay with
You're okay with
this.
Yeah.
You were okay with this. You were okay with this. You even voted for this. Some of you.
You said you wanted it.
Was anyone here? But certain people voted for this thing, but they had never imagined that they would be the one in the cage until it actually shuts.
Yep.
So manufactured consent, it's been their entire rollout is to see how much you can take in a little bit of time and get our media to desensitize you to it. So the fact that when the true intention finally comes, it's just like, oh no, but you're okay with that.
Yep.
Everything was fine.
Yep.
And yeah, as many of you mentioned, we are here. They want to get rid of the Department of Education. This is how it starts.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to be illiterate in a couple of years if something doesn't happen. I mean, most of the babies can't read now.
Yeah.
And it's like, so now you're going to start homeschooling, teaching in your living rooms if you have the luxury to do so.
Yep.
Because you have to work. And this is the rollout. We are here. It's very much here. Libraries, yes, public libraries, depending on your zip code, is how much they get funded and how many books they get and what type of books they're going to get. If you live in Massachusetts and certain, or I don't know, around the Martha's Vineyard area, if you're in New York, you have a wonderful library.
Yeah.
If you live in Newark, like I grew up in, you have a shitty ass library and you have to trek to get, to a good library if you could afford that bus fare. So it's, yeah, man, scary. I just think I don't know what the light at the end of the tunnel would be as opposed to getting in the habit of forming community now, because it's safe and to be doom and gloom, I guess. And a lot of us are tired. But I mean, I think that's the only solution, as Butler has been trying to interweave in her different books, is those that have and can forge the community, they do slightly better than the people who don't. And I think that would be our form of action. Because as I mentioned before, this has been spanning across political parties. It's not like it doesn't matter. It didn't matter. So, yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I think we're going to end on that. I need to read 2 quotes to you all to kind of frame what we're about to walk into with the Parable of the Talents next week. And so these are from Butler's archive. They were specifically geared towards Parable of the Talents, which is why I haven't read them. And so if you all remember that for Parable of the Sower, I told you all who Lauren's role models were. And if you don't remember, according to Butler's archive, she liked JFK, Harriet Tubman. Those were her role models for Parable of the Sower. When we get to Talent, she is a grown woman. And her role models are Winston Churchill, Richard Nixon, Harry Truman, Abraham Lincoln, Nelson Mandela, and Moses. And the quote that I want to read you all, because it's going to frame what we're about to go into in Talents, is Butler says, white men will resent Olamina when they begin to take her seriously. They will first ignore her or laugh at her. They will focus on the ridiculousness of her position. A black woman is going to save us by taking us all to Alpha Centauri. They will question her sanity and that of her followers. They will evoke Jim Jones and warn people about her. And as all hell erupts and Earthseed is stable and prosperous, they will, in envy, anger, sexism, racism, and greed, turn savage. If she, Olamina, is succeeding at holding her group together while so many white male things disintegrate, she must be a criminal, a psychotic person, a traitor, or the cause of disintegration, and she must be stopped. So, y'all saying some of those folks are shocking. I'm saying all this. I read you this quote because we are about to encounter white America, more specifically the religious right side of white America. And I want to prepare you all for that because it can be alarming, it can be jarring, it can be scary. And so I just wanted to read that quote about white men resenting her and what they would begin to do to a black woman in charge. I want y'all to pay attention to the Substack. I think either tomorrow or Friday, I'm going to drop some images from the archive about Butler's thoughts on black women leadership, black women in leadership, and the need for it, more specifically in the 1980s and 1990s. But that is all I got. We've been here. We've been here. Brace yourself, read slow. Take a break if you need to. Thank y'all for saying you love the Substack. Consider becoming paid members over there. But take your time with this. We're reading this in 3 installments. And if you're new here, the syllabus is on the Substack where I tell us where to stop. Don't read ahead or don't give us any spoilers if you can. And I will see y'all next Wednesday. Do y'all have any questions for me? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and work to upload this tonight. Sometimes TikTok doesn't let me download it in time, but I'm going to try to get this up on YouTube tonight. If you do want to watch this replay, the link is in my bio. And then the link to the YouTube is in the bio and to the Substack. Okay. So if no questions, I'll see y'all next week. Okay. All right, y'all. Good night. Bye.